The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
I must say, Trump 45, you originated the fact that in Europe we are now spending, when you take it to aggregate, 700 billion more on defense than when you came in office in 2016, 2017. But that was Trump 45. But when you look at Trump 47, what happened the last couple of weeks is really staggering. The Europeans committing to a package of 800 billion defense spending. The Germans now, potentially up to $500 billion extra in defense spending. And then, of course, you had Keir Starmer here, the British Prime Minister, and others, all committing to much higher defense spending. We also discuss defense production, because we need to produce more weaponry. We are not doing enough. And not in the US, not in Europe, and we are lacking behind when you compare to the Russians and the Chinese. And you have a huge defense industrial base. Europeans buying 4 times more here than the other way around, which is good because you have a strong defense industry, but we need to do more there to make sure that we ramp up the production.
That's President Trump together with the NATO Secretary General, Mark, I think Rutte is his name. And they're just having a friendly chat about Europe militarizing itself to separate from the United States security umbrella and to go it alone. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us on today's show, the last show of the week. Hard to believe Friday is upon us. It is here. You can get to the live video stream of this show at trumpetdaily.com or at the Rumble channel. Just go to rumble.com/Trumpet Daily. The email address, if you'd like to send some feedback to the show, td@thetrumpet.com. So as you might have read this morning, if you follow our daily email blasts, the morning brief from the Edstone office across the pond, Richard Palmer, who says, what a difference a day makes. Obstacles to Germany's rearmament are quickly evaporating. As I say, I mean, they're talking about it openly in the Oval Office, and this is something that has America's blessing. Yesterday, I played that clip for you from the comedian who said, you know, the one country that concerns me is Germany. And then it became this laugh track throughout the shtick. Why? Well, I don't know if you're history buffs, but in World War I, this happened. And then again in World War II, Germany took on the world. Germany tried to take over the world. But within diplomatic circles, I mean, that's all out the window. Hey, they get a pass. No national repentance. Or otherwise, they get a pass, and now we're talking about how exciting it is that the obstacles are being removed and that Germany's going to pour $500 billion into its military. It has to, as I've been saying. It talks about how the Greens have dropped their opposition because they're getting some perks from the German government as well. It says at the European level, the Dutch have dropped their objection to the defense spending package. 3 of the 4 members of the coalition voted against it, but the Prime Minister browbeat them into line. Everybody's falling into line. What little resistance is there, I mean, it's easy to stamp it out. Listen, fall in line. We need a German military machine. Says here, as I wrote yesterday, it will still require a strong man for Europe to overcome all its political squabbles, but there's clearly a massive level of urgency behind this increase in defense spending, and they're finding ways to push onward fast. There you've got the NATO Secretary General. He's saying, I agree with Trump, and Trump's nodding along, everybody in Europe is, I mean, they're ponying up. And you're going to have a military in Europe before you know it. These are some alarming developments. They should be. But most people yawn. I mean, most people, honestly, in the United States, they don't even really concern themselves with what's happening beyond our own borders. If they are, they're cheering for Donald Trump. Finally, America first, let them take care of themselves. Like I said earlier this week, I mean, on the one hand, you have peace, peace. We're going to make peace. Peace is going to fill the earth. And oh, by the way, there's also an arms race. Not just in Europe, all over the world. And you got Germany talking about building nukes. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but no one else seems concerned. And we've got to dig deep into the clips list to find some pretty straightforward remarks, but as it happens, it comes from a comedian. An edgy comedian, he's since died, but an edgy comedian that is just saying what no one else wants to say. That's the theory anyway. Today, I don't know. As I said yesterday, I'm not sure how many years ago that clip was, but today, you wonder if even comedians would joke about it. It has everyone's ringing endorsement. President Trump said this yesterday about America and all that it's contributed to the Ukraine war effort and how that Europe needs to step up. Clip 2.
How does this new transatlantic cooperation how do you envision it?
Well, that's one thing. I mean, we're on the other side of the ocean, and they're right there. And yet we're in for $350 billion because of Biden, and they're in for $100 billion. So it's a big difference. And it's unfair. And I said, you have to equalize. They should equalize. They should have. It should have never happened where Biden just gave this money away.
So we're here and, well, they're there. So in his mind, well, it's a money thing as well, as you heard there, but it's also a geographical thing. It's over there. We don't want to mess with it. Or if we are going to mess with it, the Europeans better pay their fair share. And what's important in all of this, as I said earlier this week, is to get the European perspective. What are they thinking? It's kind of like with what's happening in Canada. It shouldn't be surprising to any American that Canadian leaders would want to put Canada first, would want to view the events of this world through Canadian interests, through the eyes of Canadian interests. This was the final day for Justin Trudeau, by the way, a day that so many of us thought might never happen. He finally stepped aside. He's replaced by Mark Carney, who's he governs in the spirit of Justin Trudeau, so not a big change government-wise, not even a constitutional change, really. Nobody voted for Carney. And the longer he stays in here, in this office, and doesn't call for a vote, the more unconstitutional this is. Trudeau has gotten all of his government, or his former government. He stacked the deck pretty much. He put everyone in position for the bureaucracy, for the crown corporations, everything in Canada, or the Canadian government. And they're all Justin Trudeau loyalists. I mean, he's even appointed replacements should some of these individuals step down. And there's really no clear indication that Trudeau's even going away for good. CBC says, an analysis of order and council appointments made since January 6, when Trudeau announced he would step down as prime minister, found 88 future appointments, some scheduled to go into effect as late as November. So the bureaucracy is still in place. It's kind of like what Donald Trump set foot into back in 2017. He was going to be president but you had the deep state scrambling to make sure that they could persecute Donald Trump at every step of the way. I mean, this is a little different. It's not someone that's the opposition to Trudeau. As I say, he's a Trudeau clone. But Trudeau has left his mark. I mean, this is the government. These are the policies. This is the Canadian agenda that many Canadians should be fighting against. He has ruined their country. It's easy to blame everything on Trump. The whole world's doing it with the tariffs and everything else. It says Trudeau's government made far more appointments during this period than it has in past years. It's because he knew he was leaving, so he wanted to get everything set in stone. Every single vacant Senate seat has also been filled. Barring resignations, the next vacancy will occur on May 14 when Conservative Senator Don Plett is scheduled to retire. And so this government, the radical left in Canada, they are warring against Jeroboam, just like the radical left does here at home now. In America, it's been largely crushed. I mean, here Chuck Schumer signs off on this continuing resolution, Trump's budget, basically. Schumer, of all people, he decides to fund Orange Hitler. Right, we've been hearing Hitler, 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 and now comes, you can see why the Democrat Party is so deeply divided. You've got AOC, she's out denouncing Schumer. What is he thinking? We've got to fight him. And Schumer saying, you know what, it's better this way. It shows you how. It shows you just how fake and phony that Hitler narrative really and truly was. If he really is Hitler, you don't fund his government. Well, there are quite a few prominent Democrats that say Schumer's wrong. Schumer shouldn't fund the government. The Democrats here are deeply divided, but as I touched on yesterday, Donald Trump is still fighting the radical left in Canada, in Europe. I mean, there's going to be a nationalist sentiment that arises out of Europe, Germany in particular, when the strongman shows up. But so many of these ruling elites, the globalists, the communists, whatever you want to call them, they hate Donald Trump, and it's important that the Trump administration understands what he's going up against. These are not allies. These are not friends. They want to destroy Donald Trump, as I say, just like the radical left wanted to destroy him here in America. They tried to assassinate him. Listen to what President Trump said yesterday. Again, this was in that meeting with the NATO Secretary General, and the press pool was there, and there was quite a lot discussed through the day. Clip 3.
Mr. President, a representative of Canada, the finance minister, are in town and will meet members of your administration during the day. Any chances that you will ban on the tariffs on aluminum and the ones that are planned for April 2nd?
No.
You are not going to change your
No,
mind?
not. Look, we've been ripped off for years, and we're not going to be ripped off anymore. No, I'm not going to bend at all. Aluminum or steel or cars, we're not going to bend. We've been ripped off as a country for many, many years. We've been subjected to costs that we shouldn't be subjected to. In the case of Canada, we're spending $200 billion a year to subsidize Canada. I love Canada. I love the people of Canada. I have many friends in Canada.
Pretty, again, I guess we've heard this before, so it's not like it's new. But to just see, he does stipulate there, I do love Canadians and so on. But then he goes on to say, you know, we don't need Canada. It was pretty shocking to hear it, even as an American. And to think again how you can see why Trudeau was able to seize upon this and almost save his government. I guess given the appointments, he actually did save his government, at least for now. Listen again to President Trump from yesterday, clip 4.
You know, the United States can't subsidize a country for $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. We don't need their energy. We don't need their lumber. We don't need anything that they give. We do it because we want to be helpful, but it comes a point when you just can't do that. You have to run your own country.
Of course, he wants to be energy independent. He wants to be independent in all things. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out with Canada. We know a lot more clearly about how it's going to play out. The opposition in Europe and elsewhere, in China, in Russia. But with Canada, I mean, if they're going to go the way of Jeroboam, Hosea 5:11, there's, I guess, many different ways that this could unfold. But considering that Canada is America's neighbor, some pretty strong statements yesterday. And then you add to it, of course, Greenland is right next to Canada as well. And he continues to maintain his position that, that Greenland is going to be taken by the United States at some point. Clip 6.
Greenland. What is your vision for the potential annexation of Greenland and getting them potentially to...
Well, I think it'll happen, and I'm just thinking, I didn't give it much thought before, but I'm sitting with a man that could be very instrumental. You know, Mark, we need that for international security, not just security, international. We have a lot of our favorite players, you know, cruising around the coast, and we have to be careful. And we'll be talking to you. It's a very appropriate, really a very appropriate question.
The issue in the high north, so the Arctic, so what you did. So when it comes to Greenland, yes or not joining the US, I would leave that outside for me, this discussion, because I don't want to drag NATO in that. But when it comes to the high north and the Arctic, you are totally right. The Chinese are now using these routes. We know that the Russians are rearming. We know we have a lack of icebreakers. So the fact that the 7, outside Russia, there are 7 Arctic countries working together on this under US leadership is very important to make sure that that region, that part of the world stays safe. And we know things are changing there, and we have to be there.
It is hugely important. From a strategic standpoint, it's a very important piece of real estate. Even if it's only populated, it's huge, and only populated by, I think, 50,000 people. But as the Secretary of General acknowledges, you've got a lot, just over the border, around the North Pole, you've got a lot of activity from China, from Russia, from a lot of U.S. adversaries. Listen to this next one, again, where he kind of levels Canada along with his comments about Greenland. Clip 7.
Mark mentioned the word icebreaker, so we've ordered, we're in the process of ordering 48 icebreakers, and Canada wants to know if they could use them. I said, well, you know, you got to pay for them. Think of it, Canada. We pay for their military. You know, Canada pays very little for their military because they think we're going to protect them. But even with the icebreakers, so we're going to order 48, and Canada wants to be part of the deal. I say, you got to get your own icebreakers. I mean, if you're a state, you can be part of the deal, but if you're a separate country, you got to get your own icebreakers. Russia, as you know, has about 40 of them, and we have one big icebreaker, but that whole area is becoming very important, and for a lot of reasons, the routes are, you know, very direct to Asia, to Russia, and you have ships all over the place, and we have to have protection. So we're going to have to make a deal on that, and Denmark is not able to do that. You know, Denmark's very far away and really has nothing to do. What happens, a boat landed there 200 years ago or something, and they say they have rights to it. I don't know if that's true. I don't think it is, actually.
The world is in realignment. That much is clear. Carney, for his part, he's heading off to Europe next week. He's already being courted by European leaders. There are these, these alliances forming based on opposition to the United States. As I say, it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out, particularly with Canada. Leaving aside our patriotic instincts for a moment, nobody wants to lose all or part of their country. But I will say, if Canada was the 51st state of America, it would definitely simplify things for God's work in terms of travel, consolidating resources, spending money, all of those things. There are restrictions that are there. And I guess in the national sense, I mean, Trump is right about pointing out those differences. Look, you're living under an oppressive socialist regime with high taxation. There would be benefits if that were to happen. I don't think that it will. But looking at it from the work standpoint, I mean, as I often say in epistles of Paul, there's neither Jew nor Greek. I mean, it's all about being spiritual Israel. And every one of us in God's church is an ambassador representing another nation, God's nation, God's kingdom. And God set up headquarters in Manasseh back in the 1930s for obvious reasons. Given the freedoms that Americans have enjoyed, you couldn't have carried out a worldwide work if it was headquartered in Baghdad or somewhere else like that. For so many years, it was in Pasadena, the headquarters. Now it's in Edmond, Oklahoma. And even with all of these differing nations, we've got brethren scattered all over the world, a lot of them in Canada. Even with that, you see this worldwide work with this centralized headquarters operation. It does make you appreciate God's government. I've got an article on this at the end of my notes. You look at this world in realignment. You look at the nuclear arms race. You look at the wars and the rumors, everything Jesus discussed there at the opening of Matthew 24. And you long for, you yearn for the kingdom. Jesus said, pray, thy kingdom come. Peter said, pray that these events would hasten, speed up, so that we could finally get to the kingdom. And then when those of us who are in God's church, assuming we've endured to the end, we're going to be there ready to teach and to lead and to show people about the kingdom of God. It's going to spread over all the earth. And we won't be restricted by any tariffs or customs officials or anything like that. It's going to be a borderless society. Now, God is going to put us with our families of man. That's clear in Scripture too. But it's all going to be God's kingdom. What a wonderful time that will be. And then you come back into this world and all of its complexities, all of its divisions, all of its me first mentality. We're seeing it every day. Yesterday, President Trump sanctioned quite a few Russian banks, which theoretically is supposed to make it impossible for EU nations to buy Russian oil. Well, why would they be buying Russian oil if Vladimir Putin is the number one menace on earth? Well, we've talked about this hypocrisy, this double dealing that's been going, that Donald Trump called out, by the way, back in 2018. And the Germans laughed in his face. And Trump turned out to be right. Mark Thiessen writes this: Treasury has ended the Biden exemption that allowed sanctioned Russian banks to process European payments for oil sales. It says, now no one in Europe can purchase Russian oil. I'm sure they'll find a way around it. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of back channel dealing that goes on, maybe secret discussions between Russia and Germany. I mean, they've been buying Russian oil, and Biden facilitated this. Think about how completely messed up this whole scenario is. Well, we've got to send hundreds of billions to Ukraine, and well, we don't want to get in the way of Europe buying energy from Russia, even though Russia. Trump gets in there. To his credit, he does simplify things. Look, you shouldn't be purchasing anything from Russia. if you really and truly want to support Ukraine. But when Donald Trump gets in there and kicks things around a little bit, people don't like it. People don't like it. The thing of it is, I mean, just going back to those early years of the first term of Donald Trump, I'm sure there was still some underlying anti-American hostility. But this time around, back then you still had the American-led NATO alliance. You had the American umbrella, the American security umbrella. Today, what's different is that Europe, so many European leaders, they see Russia, not just Russia as an enemy, but America even as a bigger enemy. You can see so many of these various alliances, whether it's Psalm 83 or Isaiah 23, Daniel 11. As I've said, it's all coming into pretty clear focus. We can see it. Well, we can skip that last one on Greenland. Play this, though, from Donald Trump. And just as you listen to this, just try to put yourself in the position of European elites and what they must think about a statement such as this. This is clip 5.
You know, if you look at Europe, take a look at the EU. We're not allowed to sell cars there. It's prohibitive because of their policies and also their non-monetary tariffs. They put obstacles in your way that you can do nothing about. But if you take a look at what happens, so we sell no cars to Europe, I mean virtually no cars, and they sell millions of cars to us. They don't take our agriculture, we take their agriculture. It's like a one-way street with them. The European Union is very, very nasty. They sue our companies. Apple was forced to pay $16 billion on a case that, very much like my cases that I won. They shouldn't have been even cases, but we felt they had no case, and they ended up having an extremely favorable judge and decision. But they're suing Google, they're suing Facebook, they're suing all of these companies, and they're taking billions of dollars out of American companies, many more than the ones I just mentioned. And I guess they're using it to run Europe or something. I don't know what they're using it for, but they treat us very badly.
They treat us very badly. The EU is very nasty to America. He rattles off a lot of facts and figures. He's right. He's right. But why, oh why, would you, in the same discussion, in the same room, with the same audience, say, yeah, Germany should lead the way. Germany should be remilitarized. Europe should have its own military, its own army. And we want out. We've got to worry about America first. We've got to worry about America at home. Fighting these radical leftists, these bureaucrats, these deep staters abroad, it's not going to work out as favorably as it did for Jeroboam here at home. That's the thing. It's quite, as my father writes in the latest Trumpet magazine, it's quite the miscalculation. But you look at the facts that he that he spews out, you know, all the lawsuits against Google, Facebook, Apple. Yeah, Europe's big on censorship. The beast power is going to be big on censorship. They're going to be not so big on democracy. When the strong man gets in, he's not even brought in by democracy. You put them all together, like Mr. Armstrong said, you've got hundreds of millions of people. That's perhaps Europe's biggest point of leverage. The fact that when you add them all together, it's what, 450, 500 million people? All they're waiting for is the emperor, the strong man. Put all those wealthy markets together, in a lot of ways they are together. Give them a united military. The Trumpet magazine back in 2019, why Europe wants to censor the internet. They want control. There are a lot of things about Europe that are not democratic. J.D. Vance brought this up, and they seethed. They hated it at that Munich conference. This is from the EU Observer. It says, after all the buildup, the transatlantic trade war has truly begun. In this regard, Europe should realize there is only one thing that Trump and his friends understand. It is force and strength. It is having the right set of cards and playing them out. We should not give away anything of our position by offering them on a silver platter to water down the rules we democratically created. We should instead put new things on the table, new cards to play. For one, and here it is, the EU Digital Services Tax, for which the Commission proposed a directive in 2018 and at the time blocked by several member states. It can be reintroduced in the new geopolitical context. We can put a tax on the internet. That'll hit them where it hurts. A targeted levy that will not harm consumers but aims directly at the excessive profits of tech billionaires supporting Trump. These are the boogeymen now, the billionaires supporting Trump. Not that long ago, even here in the States, the Dems, I mean, they love them some billionaires. There's plenty of them, like George Soros. You saw the clip with Obama and Elon Musk from not that long ago. They were bosom buddies. All these billionaires. Zuckerberg. Some have said the fake president wouldn't have won in 2020 without Zuckerbucks. But now there's a new administration. It's very different. No one thought he was coming back. God said that he would. And now he's back. And it's shaking the world. It's shaking the world. It's shaking America. And so many of the changes, so many of the policies, so many of the points on the agenda, I mean, they're helping America. God said he would intervene and save America by the hand of Jeroboam. Earlier this week, I talked about how that virtually, I played you the clips from Pelosi and Schumer, and forget who the other one was, but they were all talking about government efficiency. We need to eliminate waste, fraud, abuse. Obama, the dear leader, he was huge on this. So was the fake president, if you can believe it. Listen to these two. It's actually just Obama. But he appointed Joe Biden as the point man on eliminating government waste, fraud, and abuse. This is from 2011, clip 9.
Everyone knows that getting rid of the deficit will require some tough decisions. And that includes cutting back on billions of dollars in programs that a lot of people care about. But what should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody. Waste we should be getting rid of, even if we didn't have a deficit. Sure, some of these cuts aren't that big, but no amount of waste is acceptable. Not when it's your money. Not at a time when so many Americans are already cutting back. Just as families are living within their means, government should too. By the way, you're not only paying for websites no one needs, you're paying for thousands of buildings all across the country no one uses. For the last decade, the government's owned a massive and completely empty warehouse in the middle of Brooklyn, for example. Now, the government hadn't been able to sell this building and others like it because of red tape and Washington politics that held things up for years. But we're finally cutting through all that and plan to get rid of these buildings in the months ahead. We need to step up our game. We need to go after every dime. We need to make government work for you. That's why, starting today, I've asked the Vice President to lead a renewed effort to hunt down misspent tax dollars in every agency and department of this government. We're calling it the Campaign to Cut Waste, and I know Joe's the right man to lead it, because nobody messes with Joe.
Right, nobody messes with Joe. The Campaign to Eliminate Waste, how'd that go for you? I mentioned the federal debt going from $13 trillion in 2010 to $37 trillion today, 15 years later. That's 2011. So under his watch, you know where it went. bailout after bailout after bailout. And then, I mean, in his defense, it continued through the first 4 Trump years as well. And it was made worse, twice as worse during COVID. We're right at the 5-year anniversary, if you can call it an anniversary, of 15 days to stop the spread. Remember that? Some of the worst weeks of our lives. I mean, I was still happy living at Edstone and living God's way of life and preaching the truth and doing this show. But what an agonizing time. Just looking at our nations and what we were doing to ourselves. And all of these businesses just shut down. And there in the UK, it was worse. I mean, you walk out on the street and in some cases, your neighbor would call you in. Yeah, they'd call the police on you. Or if they heard you with some kind of social interaction going on through the wall of the apartment, they'd call the police, the COVID police. The government made you shut it all down. Western governments in Britain, in the United States. I mean, in the States, it was worse in some states than in others, but still, look at how many lives were destroyed, livelihoods destroyed. This is from Politico. It's happening this week. Donald Trump's firing people. And you've got these activists dressed in black robes that are seriously saying you can't fire a bureaucrat. Here we had, 5 years ago, people were getting fired all over the place. A year after that, they're getting fired from government jobs because they didn't get the jab. They're getting fired from the military because they didn't get the jab. Trump comes in basically on that same message you just saw from the dear leader and says, we've got to eliminate some of these jobs, these positions, and he's giving them like 6 months severance pay. Who gets this? Listen, we're going to have to lay you off. We're trying to cut the fat, trim the fat, and we'll give you a very generous buyout. And some activist judge from San Francisco, it's actually, when is the Supreme Court going to stop this madness? Where did the founding fathers say, you know what, amid all of his powers, the president cannot fire anybody? That's just constitutional, you see. Politico says U.S. District Judge William Alsup describes the mass firings as a sham strategy by the government's Central Human Resources Office. So he knows. He knows every single one of these bureaucrats is pretty much a saint. The hardest worker you've ever known. These are people on probationary positions. Says a judge on Thursday, ordered federal agencies to reinstate tens of thousands of probationary. I think these were temporary employees anyway, who were fired by Donald Trump in his turbulent effort to drastically shrink the federal bureaucracy. Who could have ever imagined that these talking heads that were so happy to see lives ruined and jobs disappear 5 years ago, that they would now be saying, you cannot fire a government employee. I mean, this is the cream of the crop in America. These are the best we have. Even this judge, he's talking about how these are hard workers. How does he know? Has he looked at it case by case, the thousands that have been let go? At what point does Donald Trump just go forward and say, deal with it? If you want to come in on your high horse from San Francisco and enforce this ruling, well, have at it. These people are fired. You're fired. This is insanity. Here we're destroying ourselves. And you've got people coming in under a new administration doing exactly what the dear leader and his point man, Joe Biden, vowed to do in 2011. Obviously, they failed. It went from 13 trillion to 37 trillion. A sham strategy, says this judge, this Clinton-appointed judge. Alsop ordered the Departments of Defense, Treasury, Energy, Agriculture, and Veterans Affairs to immediately offer all fired probationary employees their jobs. Oh, so evidently Alsop is now the president. He ordered the Pentagon, take them back. He ordered the Agricultural and Veterans Affairs Department, the Treasury Department, the Energy, you take them back. I order you to take these bureaucrats back. This is where we are in America. This unelected judge, this activist in a black robe, from San Francisco of all places, he's about as far as you can possibly be from the swamp, but he knows. He knows. Presumably they're probably all like Alexander Vendeman. You know, they're just bureaucrats for life and you know, radical left-wingers. That's what makes them so holy and righteous. 90% of the government is. DC is 90% Democrat. But you can't fire any of them. Not even if you're the duly elected chief executive officer of the land. Donald Trump is the chief executive officer. You would think the Supreme Court would be on this in like 2 seconds. It's amazing. 5 years on. I mean, 5 years ago, they were happily, these activists, they were happily canceling people. Yeah, eliminating jobs, destroying people's livelihoods. And now look, speaking of the COVID nightmare, this is from Deutsche Welle. COVID pandemic likely unleashed by lab mishap, says Germany's BND. So now we get the truth. You know who said it was a lab leak from the beginning? That would be Orange Hitler. Orange Hitler got it right. How many other elites around the world knew it was a lab leak, but because of their deranged hatred of Orange Hitler, they just put a lid on it? You know, listen, we've got to cover that up for the greater good. We can't come out and say Trump was right. According to reports in the German papers, the BND based its conclusion on the analysis of material from the public domain and that it collected in the course of an investigation with the code name Serema. It says the material, some of which came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, located in the Chinese city where the pandemic is believed to have started, indicated that there had been some risky research methods used there, compounded by breaches of laboratory safety rules. Yeah, guess where they got quite a bit of their funding? Fauci, Collins, NIH, CDC. The paper said there was evidence that Wuhan researchers carried out so-called gain-of-function experiments in which viruses occurring in nature are manipulated. Such research can cause changes in the way a virus causes illness, its transmissibility, and the types of hosts it can infect. How many people died from COVID? And again, the vulnerable were the old and the sickly. But even to this day, I mean, how many of you get a sickness? Not that sickness is normal. No sickness should be considered normal. It comes as a result of physical sin, as Herbert Armstrong taught us. But we've all made mistakes, and we all weaken from time to time. But a couple times over the last few years, I mean, it's not just that you've gotten sick because you deserve it. You've gotten sick, and the sickness is something that is especially strange. It's still, the mutations, there surely must be lingering after effects from this, and it's man-made. That's the big story. That's the buried lead here. This is what should have been on the daily tracker for all of 2020. This is started by man. And we're shutting down everything. Man shut it all down. And then the firings, if you don't get vaccinated, the man did that too. Everything we did, the way we responded, how it started from the beginning. This was a colossal man-made disaster on every level. And yet we were treated to this fake, false narrative. It's a deadly sickness. It's spreading fast. And we just need to shut everything down for 15 days to, slow the spread down a little bit. And just so that you know, we've got everybody unleashed. All of our scientists, they're going to put together a vaccine. It's on the fast track. It wasn't even a vaccine. It just caused more problems, caused a lot of sudden deaths and tragic side effects. That's the truth. A man-made disaster. It says here there were also indications that there had been numerous violations of safety regulations at the lab, according to the report. Safety regulations, testing, manipulating diseases, U.S. funding, and then boom, the world shuts down. Just 15 days to slow the spread. We made a joke out of that for, a year and a half? One of our old programs, I think, was titled something like 1,336 Days to Slow the Spread. The BND reached its conclusions as early as 2020, the papers said, giving them a likelihood rating of 80 to 95%, but the assessment was kept from the public at the time. Why? Why would they keep it from the public? Why not transparency? They all knew, didn't they? They were all in on it. I mean, we're talking about some really nefarious activity going on behind the scenes. And you see it. We've seen it since with emails that have been released through FOIA requests. Collins and Fauci, all of those usual suspects, lying. Fauci was the highest paid government employee. You talk about eliminating waste. If he were still around today, I would hope Elon Musk would get rid of him first. He didn't stay around long enough, though, to suffer any consequences. They know exactly when to get out. They're like cockroaches underneath the light. They scurry away. Now where are they? If he was so bright, so brilliant, if he saved America, where is he today? Nobody wants to hear from him. He's a disgrace. I'm sorry, he is. We were lied to, and people died. There were consequences. The BND reached its conclusions as early as 2020. That's when it was happening. But, the bad orange man was saying, I think it was a lab leak. Come on. And then you can see Fauci in the background chuckling. Oh, man. Oh, President Trump. What a rube. What an idiot. I can't believe I have to work for a guy like this. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's the way the world still views Donald Trump. In a lot of ways, it's even worse. They want to fight against him and destroy him. And Europe is assembling a military force in order to do just that. They don't know it right now, but that's what's coming. There's a mind change. Nahum 1, Habakkuk 1, it's coming. The strong man's coming. The 10 nations are coming. And in a lot of ways, they're coming for Donald Trump. They're coming for America. And if you listen to the dialogue, if you listen to the discourse, you see the hatred, the animosity. You see who views who as an enemy and who views who as as an ally. It's all coming into clear focus. Well, I want to save enough time for this week's installment of WorldWatch. That's something we reserve for Friday's show. If you'd like to submit some feedback, by the way, you can reach us at TD at thetrumpet.com. So we'll take a short break, and then when we return, we'll finish off today's show with WorldWatch. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We'll be right back.
Are we living in the last days? Some dismiss the notion as fanatical, but world leaders and news analysts are issuing warnings that are becoming more and more dire. Could Bible prophecies about the last days actually be accurate? Our brochure can help guide you through the relevant news and history and help you compare these events to what the Bible says. Are we living in the last days? This brochure is available for free right now at thetrumpet.com.
Cyprus's Barak MX anti-aircraft defense system, or Iron Dome, is now fully operational, K News reported on March 7th. According to K News, the system developed by Israeli aerospace industries is a major upgrade to Israel's Iron Dome. It is more sophisticated and has the ability to launch and track multiple guided missiles simultaneously. While this upgrade enhances Cyprus's ability to defend itself and the surrounding region, it weakens Israel's. Israel is sharing a significant piece of defense intelligence with a European country tied to Germany. Bible prophecy says Germany will soon lead a united Europe to dominate the Middle East and conquer Jerusalem. Trumpet editor-in-chief Gerald Flurry has highlighted how Cyprus's strategic position could play a major role in these prophecies. To see how Israel has opened up to Germany and where this geopolitical shift is leading, read Defense System Sale Marks Historic Turning Point in Israel-Germany Relations. China, Russia, and Iran will participate in joint naval exercises planned for this month, the Chinese Defense Ministry announced on March 9th. The Security Belt 2025 drills will take place in the Gulf of Oman, near the Iranian port of Chabahar. The ministry stated that the aim of this initiative is to strengthen military trust and pragmatic cooperation, as well as to ensure security in the region. These exercises mark the fifth joint naval exercise between China, Russia, and Iran since 2019. Chabahar is about 60 miles from the Strait of Hormuz, an oil and gas choke point in the Middle East. Russia and China's concerns over the security of the region show their desire for stronger influence in the Middle East. The Bible prophesies an alliance of Asian nations headed by Russia and China. That is why the Trumpet closely watches as these two nations increase cooperation. To understand more, read our Trends article, Why the Trumpet Watches Russia Allying with China. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, speaking to the nation's parliament on March 7th, announced a large-scale plan to provide all adult males with military training. The program aims to boost Poland's number of soldiers from 200,000 to 500,000. Poland is already the largest defense spender in NATO proportional to its overall economy, devoting 4% of its gross domestic product to defense last year. But Tusk expressed concern that Poland's military capabilities would be insufficient to protect itself if Ukraine were defeated by Russia. He said Poland would find itself in a much more difficult geopolitical situation. The Bible prophesies that fear of Russian aggression will motivate Europe to become an independent military superpower. To learn more, read our Trends article, Why the Trumpet Watches Europe's Push Toward a Unified Military. To learn more about current world news and how it relates to Bible prophecy, please visit thetrumpet.com.